Hi, I'm Brandi. Welcome to Live Right Tonight. I am here with Corey from 217 Recovery. How are you, Corey?
I am doing well.
So, Corey, tell us a little bit about yourself before we jump into the details.
Okay, just a little bit about myself is right now I live in Traverse City, Michigan. I'm married and my wife and I are trying to have babies. I know it's so crazy. I'm adulting. And it's weird because I'm 45. So I mean this a lot of people have in their 20s usually, then they're in their 30s, but to be 45 and actually, being allowed to do this, is something that it's a blessing, and you can look at it, one of two ways as a blessing, or you can look at it as, oh, I missed out and woe is me. But um, I was busy padding my resume to help people. If you
There's
you know
nothing
what I'm
wrong with that.
saying.
There's nothing wrong with that. If you can do it, why not, right?
Yeah. And
And you're in a
a lot of
place for
people,
it.
yeah, a lot of people I think have regrets, and they're like, oh man, but if I wouldn't have been drunk my whole 20s and 30s, like, maybe I could have had some then, and oh, it's too late. But you can't really look at it like that, is kind of what I
No.
was referring to, because it wasn't meant to be. It wasn't meant to be that way. And working on my resume to help people, it wasn't an easy resume to build, and it was a painful resume. And I hurt a lot of people along the way, but now I can help people and actually enjoy life for once. So it's good.
Awesome. So tell me, now with I know that you're in sobriety. How long have you been in sobriety?
I've been clean since December 15th, 2018. So coming up, I mean, over 4.5 years now, I guess, but be 5 years in December.
Yeah. And if you don't mind me asking, what was your substance choice?
Uh, my DOC was alcohol mainly, but it would switch. But it was always still alcohol. But then when I was drunk, because we don't make good decisions when we're drinking, I would try other drugs. Cocaine, meth, heroin. Bring it on. Is my thing, because why not? Is your stuff better than
So
my
smart when
drinking?
we're drinking, right?
Yeah. So it kind of would lead to other things, but no, alcohol was the number one though that I'd always go back to. And smoking pot, I thought I would just smoke pot for a while, and that didn't work. Lasted maybe 2 days, because that wasn't what my brain was wanting. My brain was already fixed and honed on alcohol, and once you are so far into it and you try to go back to, oh, I'll go back to smoking pot because I didn't like mixing the two. Nope, still didn't like mixing the two. So then I just threw away the weed and kept drinking. So it didn't really work for me, but.
I do know because we have talked multiple times, and you used to work on the radio show because you absolutely had the voice for it. 100%. You had that radio voice. What radio shows were there? Was it an iHeart Radio?
Yeah, ended up working for iHeartMedia, but I started out in Benton Harbor, Michigan, for WIRX, which was a Midwest family owned company. Back in the day, they were great. It was the company that you would think when it's called Midwest Family. And I remember one time, I was really young, like 19 or something, and I didn't really know about credit cards, but I got some, and they started garnishing my wages or whatever. And I was like, I can't afford this. And they're like, look, we'll pay it for you, and then we're going to take a little bit out of your check. Does that work? And I was like, yes, that saves me. Thank you. So that was the kind of family. And then they've changed management. So now they look at the newspaper and laugh when people get into trouble or, file for bankruptcy. And it's just like, wait a minute, that's not the same company. But I started there, and then I started there when I was 17, worked there until I was like 22, 23. Then I moved to Kalamazoo, where I worked for WRKR for 2 years. And then I went to San Antonio, Texas, did a little country radio, which was not my thing. So I was only there for like 9 months. And then I went to Dallas, and I ended up doing nights for a minute at their rock station there, which was fun. But then I wanted to be in management. So I took a job in Fort Smith, Arkansas, which then was for Clear Channel Media. or Clear Channel, and then they changed it for like 2 weeks to Clear Channel Media and Entertainment, and they changed it to iHeart. And
Okay.
then I wanted to come home. So then I did. I came home, and that didn't work out so well. So, but it did. It worked out exactly how it was supposed to.
Right. Everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
Now,
And
what? I'm sorry, go.
no, I was just gonna say just real quick, that and it's kind of crazy. When I was in Fort Smith, Arkansas, like I didn't know anybody, and Arkansas is not like Texas, like I thought it was going to be. So I was depressed. I was alone. I mean, it was perfect recipe to kill myself, with drinking, and I almost did. That's where my liver shut down and kidneys shut down and all that. And I was 36 at that time, so I'm like, I'm too young for this. But nope, you're not. That's how it happens. But my grandmother had talked to me and said that she had talked to God about what I was doing there and all the stuff that I was learning because I was at iHeart. I was the community director, promotions director, imaging guy, website guy. I learned it all. And my grandma told me that I was learning all of that to use for God one day. And at that time, I only thought like, okay, grandma, you're crazy. And there's no way a Christian radio station would ever hire me. Like if I sent them my demo, it would like blow up their computer. Like they wouldn't even be able to put the disc in, and it would probably corrupt their email. So I thought my grandma was crazy. But now looking back at it, all the tools and all the things that I've learned have helped us, with 217 recovery, and it helps me write proposals. And I don't know exactly what I'm doing, but I know just enough to be dangerous. And but she's right though, like all the stuff that I did learn there, I am using for good to help other people. So it was kind of crazy, and I just wanted to add that in there and give a shout out to my grandma. Rest in peace.
No, absolutely, and that's awesome. Now, tell me a little bit about 217 recovery. W- where did this come from?
A lot of people are like, hey, what, like, is that like a area code? And it is an area code. I mean, there's only so many of them, but it's a area code somewhere in Illinois, and it has nothing to do with that. It is a room number. The treatment facility, which I'm not going to name, I would recommend people not go to this one. But it was the room number that I was in when it was the room number I had when I was in that treatment center, and I had been to treatment like 15 times. So going to treatment, hearing the same stuff over and over, that's not what did it. It didn't finally like sink into my head. What sunk into my head was, what can I do to change myself? And what are the things I need to work on? And I wanted to work on finding a purpose, because after radio, I thought, well, I'll go back to school and be a drug counselor. And that was just not working. And so I was taking jobs that weren't anything to do with any kind of career. I didn't want to go back into radio because I knew that would definitely lead to more drinking and drugs and dying. And so I was like in this limbo. So I thought, okay, I need to find my purpose. I need to be more spiritual. I started going to this non-denominational church, and this preacher, the first time I went there, he gets up there and he told people, invited them to go to other churches in the city because of what he's about to say. And I'm like, okay, this is going to be good. What did he do? And he just, all he said was that he doesn't believe in religion, and he started going on this thing. And I'm like, okay, that's what I'm talking about, like, so this is my thing. And so I wanted to be more spiritual, and I wanted to help others. And in room 217, there were two guys in there, and we would get done with groups at the end of the day or whatever. We'd come back and we would talk, and we would reflect on our day about so and so made me mad, but why did he make me mad? Because anger is a secondary emotion. And what was I really feeling? I was feeling disrespected, or I was feeling like this. And we started like breaking that down. And another thing, that when I went in there, I walked in the door and I thought, okay, I can come in here and hang my head. I'm court ordered to be here for 90 days. I can either hang my head, or I can flip it around and say that I'm going to have fun in recovery. So I did the latter of that and said, I'm going to have fun in recovery. So with those guys, we started like, I don't want to say playing games, but we were playing games, and like we would give each other stuff to say, but we had to work it in a way that made sense. We couldn't just be, talking and say cheeseburger. It had to be something that reflected with that story that we were telling, that hard story to get off our chest. And I had issues at the time with abandonment, and my, like, the way I moved across the country for radio, and then my father moving away when I was young. So I would take some of those stories or whatever they would tell me to say and work them into that, and it made it so much easier to say those things when you're worried about that goofy thing that your friend told you to say. And it really became like a tool for us to talk about those things. So it was really kind of fun and interesting. So when we got out, we went to sober living, and we were going to make a podcast, and that was one of the things that a guy came down the steps and said to us was like, "Oh, you damn 217 guys, you're always up to something, you know?" And so we thought, "Oh, well, we'll call the podcast 217." But of course, 217.com was taken by some company overseas or something. And so we just thought, all right, 217 recovery. So that's how we formed that. And then probably about 3 months later, after we started the podcast, a woman reached out to us and said, "You know what the angel number to 217 means?" And I said, "No, I'm not really into that, but let me look." And I did. And the angel number for 217 is pretty long, but it's on our website. But it's basically about finding purpose, helping others, and being more spiritual. And that really freaked me out.
Everything you just said to me is that's what you wanted to do.
And so it really flipped from a room number to more of that, and that's what we do. And we have fun in recovery still today. So
Well, that's good. And the two guys that you were in the recovery center, are you still connected with them?
no, not really. I reach out to him every once in a while. Rob, he is kind of in and out of good times, bad times. Matt, kind of the same thing. And I wish him well. Every time I talk to him, I'm like, "You guys need to get back up here. You need to, like, you need to do this, you need to do that." And of course, you should never tell anybody what to do, but to just kind of extend the offer to him of, "Hey, maybe try it again." And there's
Right.
always excuses, and one of them was making pretty lame excuses about how he had to. He didn't say this, but he did in so many words. He had to pay his drug dealer off. I'm like, "Well, why would you worry about, like, you're going to stiff anybody? That's the guy you stiff, man. But you're
Right.
keeping that door open. Like, oh, I don't want to owe him money in case." And trust me, dude, he'll give it to you later too. Like he'll give you. He'll be like, "You know what? Clear debt, and you've already bought his car, his house, his new bed, his
Right. You
engagement
paid
ring,
his
whatever. You
mortgage.
bought it for him. He'll front you some stuff and clear that debt for you. And it's just kind of a lame excuse, but when you're in that mindset, it's hard to get out of it.
Mhm.
You know,
Absolutely. Well, with your 217 recovery, now is this just a podcast or is this actually like a recovery home, meeting group? What involves with the 217 recovery?
Well, we started out as just a podcast. And then very early on, that was when I was in sober living. And I realized that there was a lot of need for transportation. And I went to the PIHP in Northern Michigan, and I said, "Well, how come nobody's doing anything about this?" And they said, "Well, I don't know." And I said, "Well, I'll do something about it." And they said, "Okay, like, we'll help you as much as we can." And so I started doing that, and we did that for about 3 years. And it was really tough because we weren't contracted through the PIHP. So we couldn't bill them directly. So we would have to find treatment centers that would be willing to work with us, which it seems like it would be easier than it was. We were registered through the state of Michigan as non-emergency medical transportation providers. The company was as well. We're a nonprofit, and we have recovery coaches driving. Like what's not to like about this? And some of the treatment centers just wouldn't do it, but most of them would. And we would have to build a treatment center, which then would take sometimes months for them to cut us a check for it. So luckily, COVID came, and I was unemployed at the time, so I was able to take some of my own money to kind of move around. And I finally started I got my first check in February of 2023, and we started driving in, I want to say the first trip we did was in July of 2020. So it took that long for me to get my first paycheck, but
Wow.
that's what you have to do sometimes. And we were able to, but we moved on from that, and we're now contracted with NMRE up here. So that's good. And we opened a lot of people call it a community center. We call it a recovery center. Just the community center name. It's like some people show up trying to work out or something, lift weights or play basketball, or I don't know, one of those things. And I would love to have a place that big, but in Traverse City, we couldn't really find it with our budget. And we did find a perfect place. So here we hold meetings, and we don't have AA or NA meetings. There's a lot of those in town. We wanted to have a place for people to come and do multiple pathways, like whatever they want to do. If a guy wants to come run a meeting about wearing orange glasses, if that makes him stay sober, then I will open the door and he can come have a meeting. Don't know how many people show up for it, but again, if you want to do it, man, we'll help you. And there's some people that started. There's a couple of Dharma meetings here. There's a Search for Serenity, which I guess is kind of a playoff off of AA, not a playoff of it, but that's like part of a chapter or something. The guy was telling me, but yeah, and then there was a gratitude meeting, and I know there's almost too many meetings now that I can't keep track of them, which is a good thing,
Yeah.
and blessed too, because there's a treatment center here, Addiction Treatment Services, and they work really close with us and they help us out a lot when I don't know something or have to go to them. They're just great to work with. But they have I think it's like 7 recovery homes
Oh,
here
wow.
for people in sober living, and they're just kind of just blocks away. So like we're really kind of like, hey guys, like use this place. And we have recovery coaches here. And recovery coaching is nice in theory, but people got to want it,
Yeah.
and so it's kind of tough. Like we thought people would just come in and be like, hey, I want a recovery coach. And sometimes they do, and then they get their questions answered or their problem solved, and then they're off, and they don't really need you anymore. So we feel like the grandma who has the kids when they're real little, and they love grandma, but then when they're teenagers, they don't want to be hanging out at grandma's house anymore. So we kind of feel like that a little bit, but it's cool though.
All right. Now, with all that, it took you about what you would say a good year for you to get base to where you're at now?
I I don't even know if we're based yet. I mean, like I don't even know. It took a long time. From when we got, yeah, I think it was May of 2020 was when we got our letter from the IRS saying that we were a nonprofit. And then it was just a process of going through it and getting with the PIHP and losing my mind at one point because I thought I had to become a transportation company, or they had told me that in order to get something through the state, it was like $150 I had to pay the state, which I was like, okay, that's not bad. But then like you have to have this kind of insurance. And so I looked that up and it was $15,000 a year. And they were trying to like put us with like limousine insurance. I'm like, no, 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 we're not a limousine. We're taking one person at a time. Like we're not taking even a group of people to meetings. We're taking one person to treatment. And how is that $15,000? And they're like, well, that's what you got to do. And then I found out, through the PIHP, they're like, no, 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 you can do the non-emergency medical transportation part of it. And I was like, oh, okay. And then you won't need to have that. And so, but from those times and those struggling days and those, as you can see, I'm bald because I pull my hair out, but it was tough, and dealing with the state, and then wondering why some of the PIHPs like just don't care, and they don't care about people. It's about money to them, and they don't understand like their whole job is based on getting these people help, and they really miss the boat on that sometimes. And I'm like, why is the PIHP in Northern Michigan willing to pay a recovery coach to take somebody to treatment, but the one in Lansing's not, the one in Southwest Michigan's not, one in Grand Rapids? Like, what's going on? You know, it just doesn't make sense. And they're putting people on buses. They're not, and then they don't show up for their intake. So you're wasting those people's time. I mean, it's just a waste of time. And for us, out of the 400 trips we've done, I'd say maybe 8 people didn't show up or weren't there. That's pretty good numbers. And I know one of them or 2 of them, the next day I ended up going back to get them to take them. So it's very rare that it happens. Most of the time they're out there with their bags packed, ready to go.
Right.
And I love taking people from jail to treatment, and not necessarily do they really want it, but it gives them a chance, and it gives me a chance to be in the car with them to kind of see where they're at. And if they don't want it, I just kind of throw it out there to like, don't stop giving up, because you're going to go to jail again. I don't really tell them that, but in so many words, if you don't change, what do you think's going to happen? Like you're going to be back in jail, and next time you won't get out.
Yeah. Now, you are a peer recovery coach?
but I
Okay.
don't do much of it.
Okay.
It depends who you talk to. Some people are like, dude, you're always talking to somebody, but I don't, I'm not like taking notes and entering stuff in computer or anything like that. But
You're just mostly just being there for some people. Okay. Now, and then with your podcasting, how often do you do podcasting and who do you do podcasting with? Like, is it all in recovery or like where's your limits with your podcast?
no limits. We we
I
do
like
some
that.
that are
No limits.
just some that are just, I don't want to say, I don't
Just
even
say
want to
it.
say that word, so I'm not going to. So no, okay. So the podcast, we have, I don't know, close to 800 episodes or something. We used to do 4 a week, and it was a way for me to get stuff off my chest. I realized when I was in treatment, and the reason why I started the podcast, a guy, he's one of my friends now, but he was a recovery coach at the time when I was heading out to treatment, stopped me and pulled me into his office, as recovery coach at Riverwood in Benton Harbor. And he's like, Corey, what's it going to take? And I was going to answer him. And well, once I get married and have kids, which of course would never happen if I didn't change my life. And he stopped me right there. He's like, shut up. He's like, I don't even want you to answer that to me. He's like, you need to answer that to yourself. What's it going to take? What do you put above drinking? And I just was sitting there like dumbfounded. Like he just told me to shut up, not answer him. And he's like, you got a long bus ride. He's like, get on the bus, get up there and think about it, because that's what it's going to take. And I thought about it. And that's when it brought me back to my radio days. Early on in radio, I remember I was like 18. I had the Saturday night show. And back then I could have a beer and get pretty buzzed. And I thought, man, there's a whole garage full of beer out there. I'm going to go grab a beer, do my Saturday show. That way I'm partying with the people. And I thought I had a better show. I thought it made me better. So as my radio career progressed, I still kept drinking on the air, to where it was like I was doing middays from like 10 to 2, and I was getting drunk in the studio. And I heard one of my commercials that I had done, and it was so bad and I was so drunk that I swore to myself that I would never drink on the air again. And that was the only thing that I put above drinking. And I never drank again on there. I'd be at a bar doing a live broadcast, and people like, hey, Corey, here's some shots. And I said, nope, not doing it. And that's the only thing I would hold true. Now, the next day I would come in smelling like a brewery. I had coworkers tell me that, but I never drank on the air. I was never buzzed like on the air again. So that was the one thing. And so I thought, okay, well, what do I need to do? And when I left radio, people started telling me you should start a podcast. I was like, about what? And a lady at the treatment center was like, well, do it about your recovery. And then of course I'm like, well, yeah, but then people are going to know. And she's like, trust me, they already do. And I wasn't even aware of how freeing that was going to be when I started that. And it's just like, okay, I threw it out there. I'm on Front Street, it's like, here's my story, and I'm in recovery. And it was so freeing, and I had been doing like AA stuff before that, where they're like, hey, don't tell nobody you're here. And it was the opposite. And I wasn't hiding anything anymore. And so for me, it was just so freeing. And that's why, we started the podcast. And I started with Rob and Matt. They kind of went away. And then a guy named Ryan was my co-host for a minute. And then some character issues kind of came out there. So then I moved to Traverse City anyway. And my, I guess, girlfriend, then fiance, and now wife, and she really kind of keeps me bolted down, because if you listen to some of our podcasts from back in the day without her, with Ryan and Chris, like we'd be pretty out there, and I remember one time it was probably like 15 minutes, 20 minutes. I don't know how we started talking about Jesus or the year of how, I don't even remember, but it was like 15 minutes. And she's just like, honey, I'll never get that time back. She was like, I was listening to that. It was just about nothing. Like you guys were just rambling on about stuff. She's like, it was funny, but she was like, it was absolutely nothing. And that's the kind of fun we had. And so with her, if I start down that road, I'll look over and she'll just give me this look, and I'm like, oh, okay, we'll just not even go there then, which I'm getting pretty good at deciphering. But now she's just graduated with her master's. She's going to be a therapist. So she's busy. She's also working for a treatment center here in town. They're starting back up a women's program where she's going to be head of that, like the therapy part, and I'm trying to have her do stuff around here at the office, and she doesn't have a lot of time. So now when I get other people on, it's like, what do they say? When the cat's away, the mouse will play or something. That's what it feels like, because I'm just like I have to get it all in. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm free. Like you let your kid off the diaper, take the diaper off, and your kid runs around the house. Like, yeah, I'm free. That's exactly what I'm like when my wife's
She's
not
probably
here.
like, oh dear God, here we go.
And she's just like, I'm not even going to listen to that one. She's like, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to put myself through that hell of what you're going to say or what you did say. And
That's awesome.
yeah,
So you
but
pretty
it's,
much just do podcasting with anybody that you come across, get out their stories.
yeah. There's a lot of people out there to talk to. There's some people around town that are like wanting to be on the podcast. They're like, hey man, I want to be on there. When are you going to have me on? When are you going to have me on? And those people, I'll say, well, hit me up when you got your 6 months, you know, like give them like dangling carrots in front of them, and sometimes they stick around for that and sometimes they don't, but at least give them something to look forward to. Because
Right.
if I were to have everybody on that wanted to be on, I wouldn't have time to write grant requests and just do all kinds of stuff, that I need to do.
Right.
Um, but yeah, there are some people, and I met some people across the country, even one guy in New Zealand. He came across our podcast and he was a big fan. And so I started talking to him and kind of helping him start up. They didn't really have nonprofits over there, but it was something very similar. Like it was kind of telling him what we were doing here. And he was like, oh, okay. And that was pretty interesting. But the recovery guy in Utah's, he's a friend of mine. Pastor Deb, she's a trip. She's out of Chicago. She is hilarious.
Oh,
She's so
really?
funny. Oh yeah, she doesn't care, man. She's great. And she was like a preacher and went to treatment and stuff.
Oh, wow.
So it's pretty wild, I thought, man, like that's crazy. Like she's like, yeah, what's crazy is being in a liquor store after service, and or going to the bar, and I'm just like, yeah, that would be kind of nuts. But like, all right, praise Jesus, everybody, let's go. Shots are on me. Like that seems nuts, and yeah, ask Pastor Deb. But she says ask Pastor Deb or something like that. But she's great, and she was one of the first people that I reached out to when I was starting the podcast. I looked for recovery podcast, and there was one, I don't even remember where it was, Colorado maybe, and I reached out to him and asked if I would talk to him, and then the guy blew me off. He gave me a time and a date, and then just blew me off. Didn't answer my call or nothing. So I thought, oh, okay. But then I looked, and it had been a while since I had done a podcast, and that's a sign and it's kind of sad if you look through some of the podcasts that are out there about recovery, and you look at their last episode, and it's like, oh, 2021. You're like, oh, like hope dude's
I've
doing
done a lot
okay.
of that. Like when I was like searching to see like who I can speak with, stuff like that. I've noticed a lot of the podcasting kind of the last one is like, wow, and we put one out every Thursday. So it's like for me to sit there, I'm like, wow, like you would just assume that there'd be so many, especially like after the pandemic, because I don't know, I feel that, the intake has been extremely high through the pandemic, the whole courts and the rehabs are like full right now. And then all of the housings for, rehabilitation, those are all full. The waiting list is insane because, with our company, we have houses and there's a waiting list that goes up to a year. And it's like, wow. And then looking at the records of it, it's like it's all stemmed from the pandemic. And it's like, I guess, I don't know, it was like coming here, you never realized the harmful of what the pandemic did to people and where it put them. So it is crazy. And to see that, the podcasting community with the recovery, it kind of went to a halt. So I am glad that you're still out there, and it was really good to meet you. Um, I know that you have a busy day, so I'm going to let you get back to your day. And again, I just want to say thank you for joining me on this podcast. And it was really good to meet you the couple times that I've met you. And I do know that you went to a retreat this past week because some of my workers, they were there and they were actually listening to your podcast. And
I'm always like that. I'm like, oh no, like that's good or bad. I don't know how to
no,
take
it's
that.
good. She loves that because we both listen to your podcast. She's the one who actually referred me to you. Amanda, she's the one that told me about you in the beginning, and then it was Amanda and then Sarah, and that's how I got a hold of you because they listened to you. So it's a good thing. It's a good
Okay,
thing.
well, I worry sometimes because sometimes I'm just like, man, that was just garbage. And some other people are like, no, that was good. You said this and that. I'm like, I don't remember saying that, but okay. But yeah, so I get a little worried sometimes because, like I said, I
See,
just kind
I
of do
don't
it.
even like to, use a script or nothing. I just like to keep it raw because I want people to know that this is real. This is a real conversation. It's not scripted. I stutter sometimes. It's normal. I'm a human. I'm human. We all make mistakes. We might say something wrong, but again, we're human and everybody makes a mistake. We just correct it. Try to,
People
at least.
out when they're like, okay, so you can edit this, and I'm like, I can, but I'm not going to because that takes time and
That's
like
me
it's
too.
not that bad. What do you mean? But I said this, and I'm
Like it's
like, eh.
fine.
If
It's
I were to
fine.
stumble, maybe, and I kind of jokingly tell them, but no, like if there's something that you absolutely want me to take out that you were talking about an ex-boyfriend or whatever, I can, but like, nah, I'm not gonna edit that,
Rather
and it's
keep
funny
it.
because I see some of them and they put together like a radio show, which nothing wrong with it, but for me, this is a podcast. I'm not doing this as a radio show. I don't
Right.
have show notes, I don't have a run sheet. It's just better to go natural. At least that's what I've
Yes. I like
at
it
least for
raw.
me. Yeah.
No,
Wait, what?
I'm 100% with you because like
Oh,
in the beginning I thought I needed to have that list and I'm just like I think I stutter more with it. And I'm like, no, I'm done. I'm done. We're going raw. This is how it's gonna go. If I mess up, oh well, we'll just keep rolling. Because you know what? Nobody's perfect in this world. I sure aren't. So it's like, nope, that's how we're doing it. But Corey, I just want to say thank you so much for joining me today. Um, Thank you for, everything that you do, the podcasting, starting what you are starting, because we need this everywhere. We need this help. We need the podcasting. That's why I continue. And like you said, look at half the podcasting of recovery. It's at a halt. So I'm just thankful that you're still out there with me, trying to kill it, trying to get the awareness out and let people know that we're out here and we're out here. Our hands are open. Just walk through that door. That's all you gotta do. The rest we can give it to you. You just gotta walk through that door. But again, I appreciate you so much. And thank you for joining me today.
thanks for having me, Brandi. And take care. And I'll have you on our podcast soon too.
Sounds good. To everybody else, thank you for watching and have a blessed day.